if y is equal to 7x plus 2 and y is equal to x over 7 plus k are both inverse functions, what is the value of k? Now there are a couple ways you can solve this problem, including finding the actual inverse of this the straight way. But what I want to try is call this function f of x and call this function g of x. And I want to use the property of inverse functions that f of g of x has to be equal to x. So now see what's going to happen. If you take f of x, well, f of g of x, that's this function f of x where all the x's are replaced with g of x, right? In this case, so f of g of x is going to be 7 times g of x plus 2. And that has to equal to x, right, according to this equation here. So now we know what g of x is, so let's replace it. So this becomes 7 times g of x, which is x over 7 plus k, plus 2, which is equal to x. And so now this is a linear equation, so we can just solve for x as usual. So let's first distribute that 7 in here. So we end up getting x plus 7k plus 2 is equal to x. So now I want to subtract an x from both sides, and in both cases we're just going to get 0, so we're left with 7k plus 2 is equal to 0. So now solving for k, we get 7k is equal to negative 2, and then dividing both sides by 7 we get that k is equal to negative 2 over 7. Now this is the more challenging way to use it to find out what k is, using the properties of inverse functions. The other way you can do it is, let's call this method 2, and up here we had method 1. So method 2 is just straight out finding the inverse. So let's do that for practice. So the function we're looking at is y is equal to 7x plus 2, right? So what we want to do is find the inverse. So now, remember the first step is done, and basically it was to replace f of x with y. And then the next step is to interchange the x's and the y's. So in this case, wherever we see a y, we want to put an x, and wherever we see an x, we want to put a y. So rewriting it, we're going to get x is equal to 7y plus 2. And then the third step is to solve for y. So let's do that. So we got x is equal to 7y plus 2. Subtracting a 2 from each side, we get x minus 2 is equal to 7y. And then dividing both sides by 7, we get x minus 2 over 7 is equal to y. But we also know that y was equal to that thing up top, right? X over 7 plus k. So in order for x minus 2 over 7 to look like x over 7 plus k, we need to distribute the 7 out. So we get x over 7 minus 2 over 7. And if that's equal to x over 7 plus k, then that could only mean that k is equal to negative 2 over 7. So there you go, two different methods to finding k in this case.